Sometimes we're faced with problems that seem insurmountable, and no one around you seems to have the answers, not even ourselves. Thankfully, we're not alone in our thoughts and fears. This is where digging into literature could be of help. With our current view of the universe and our place in it, with senseless suffering going on around us, life can seem at times meaningless and absurd. One may start to weigh the pros and cons with continuing with daily existence. Is it worth it? This persistent question was of profound importance to Albert Camus, a French philosopher and journalist born in 1913. Camus published Myth of Sisyphus in 1942, in which he attempted to contemplate and resolve the problem of suicide. He was attempting to justify life. I did want to mention, I'm doing my best to articulate the ideas of others, not my own ideas, and I'm not saying that one's ideas are correct over another's. Anyways, the main issue that this essay attempts to resolve is the problem of suicide, either philosophical suicide or physical. He asserts that there is but one truly serious philosophical problem, which is the problem of this act, and all the rest come afterwards. His conclusion was that despite the absurdity and suffering life entails, this fatal act does not provide a legitimate way of escape. He wants to purge its emotional content and know its logic and integrity. We will follow his argument and hopefully see the problem through another's keen eye. We will start with a quote that reads, "O my soul, do not aspire to immortal life, but to exhaust the limits of the possible." We will see that this foreshadows his conclusion. In Camus' argument, keep in mind that there is no metaphysic, no belief is involved in it for a moment. In other words, it does not rely on a god or otherworldly savior outside of our own selves. He gave this problem much attention, as he saw many people die because they judged life as not worth living. Also, paradoxically, others getting killed for ideas that give them a reason to live. This essay explores the relationship between individual thought and suicide. An act like this is prepared within the silence of the heart. The man himself is ignorant of it. He noticed that rarely is the act committed through reflection, that it can be seen as a confession that life is either too much for you, or that you do not understand it. In the past, concepts of an all-powerful God, a safe destination after death, comforted the thoughts of the night, as even a world that can be explained with bad versions is a familiar world. And really, it is the unknown that terrifies us. If one has begun to question or reject these metaphysical explanations, their exile is now without remedy, and one has deprived himself of the memory of a lost home or hope of a promised land. Where does one go in these deserts of thought? It is very easy to get caught up in the mundanity of everyday existence. This path is usually easy to follow most of the time. But one day, the why arises, and everything begins in the awareness tinged with amazement. Time starts to carry us, and one realizes that he belongs to time. And by the horror that seizes him, he recognizes his worst enemy. Hope is no longer enough to carry us. This vicious cycle is but the first of a series in which the mind that studies itself gets lost in a giddy whirling. The mind's deepest desire parallels man's unconscious feeling in the face of the universe. Attempting to understand the world is attempting to reduce it to the human. That nostalgia for unity illustrates the essential impulse of the human drama. Can we ever truly understand the world around us? Of whom and what, indeed, can I say, I know that. This heart within me I could feel, and I judge that it exists. This world I could touch, and likewise judge that it exists. There ends all my knowledge. This very heart which I call I will forever be undefinable to me. What is absurd but the confrontation of this irrational and wild longing for clarity? The mind, when reaching its limits, must now make a judgment and choose its conclusions. The absurd has meaning only insofar as it is not agreed to. A man who has become conscious of the absurd is forever bound to it. As a solution to this, what Kierkegaard called quite plainly is a sacrifice of the intellect. The intelligence must sacrifice its pride and the reason bow down, recognizing that seeking what is true is not always seeking what is desirable. A man's thought becomes his nostalgia. The absurd springs up in the intersection of the appetite for the absolute and unity within us, and the impossibility of reducing the world to a rational and reasonable principle. Hence, what one now demands of oneself is to solely with what he knows, to accommodate himself to what is, and bring him nothing that is not certain, to live without appeal. Just as danger provided man the unique opportunity of seizing awareness, So a metaphysical revolt extends awareness of the whole human experience. The absurd is one's extreme tension, which he maintains constantly by solitary effort. For one knows in that consciousness, and in that day-to-day revolt, he gives proof of his only truth, defiance. The absurd man then catches sight of a burning, transparent, and limited universe in which nothing is possible, but everything is given, and beyond which is collapse and nothingness. Belief in the absurd is tantamount to substituting the quantity of experience for the quality. Three consequences arise from this line of reasoning: one's revolt, freedom, and passions. Obeying this flame is the easiest but hardest thing to do at times. Being one with the absurd is being one with time. There is no frontier between what a man wants and what he is. A great work of art is born of the intelligent's refusal to reason the concrete, embodying an intellectual drama. If the world were completely clear, art would have no reason to exist. Expression begins where thought ends. Creating is not easy. It requires daily effort, self-mastery, and discipline. Of all the schools of patience and lucidity, creation is the most effective, according to Camus. One truly recognizes one's course by discovering the paths that stray from it. It is, for this reason, a great work of art has less importance in itself than in the ordeal it demands of man, and the opportunity it provides him of overcoming his phantoms and approaching a little closer to his naked reality. To create is to give shape to one's fate. This brings us to the myth of Sisyphus. Here is how the story goes. The gods condemned Sisyphus to ceaselessly roll a rock onto the top of a mountain. Then the stone would fall back of its own weight. We could consider Sisyphus as the absurd hero. His whole being is exerted toward accomplishing nothing. At the very end of his long effort, measured by skylit space and time without depth, the purpose is achieved. He then watches the stone roll back down. It is during that return, that pause, that the story of Sisyphus interested Camus. The face that tolls so close to stones becomes stone itself. The hour of breathing space which returns as surely as the suffering, that is the hour of consciousness. At those moments, he is superior to his fate. He is stronger than this rock. His fate belongs to him. Now remember, this rock is solely a metaphor. A rock could be your art, it could be your business, it could be your quest for scientific understanding. It is all of the above. I'll end this podcast with how he ended his essay. This universe henceforth, without a master, seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that night-filled mountain, in itself forms a world. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Thank you for listening. If there is something you'd like to hear, please let me know in the comments. And also, if you'd like to see more content, please support my Patreon. Thank you.